بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم تسليما كثيرا إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. Dear brothers and dear friends, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَمَا كَفَرَ سُلَيْمَانَ وَلَكِنَّ الشَّيَاطِينَ كَفَرُوا يُعَلِّمُونَ النَّاسَ السِّحْرَ صدق الله العظيم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about magic in the Quran. He says, Sulaiman alayhi salam did not disbelieve. It was the shayateen and the shaitans that did the kufr, and they used to teach people magic. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then goes on in the ayah to say, فَيَتَعَلَّمُونَ مِنْهُمَا مَا يُفَرِّقُونَ بِهِ بَيْنَ الْمَرْءِ وَزَوْجِهِ. They used to learn from them things by which they would cause a separation between a man and his wife. However, they can't harm anybody with it by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This verse essentially speaks about magic. Magic is something that exists in the world, and we believe that it exists. You can't deny it. Lots of people like to ignore it. And there's some people who are absolutely obsessed with it. So you've got some people who speak about it all the time, thinking that they have a curse upon them, that they are bewitched, and they think that somebody has done a spell on them. And then there's other people who can't find an explanation for something that is wrong with them, but they're not willing to do ruqyah. They're not willing to take the benefit of the verses in the Quran and the du'as that are there for people to benefit from. So this is something that I want to speak about. Recently, in the last 10-15 years, there's been an increase in the love for magic. This is among the non-Muslims, and maybe even among Muslims. But there's lots of articles that are discussing witchcraft, sorcery, creating spells, dealing with matters related to what they call the occult. And there's these young people and others who are, through TikTok and Instagram and other places, they're learning about these things, and they are getting involved in something they don't understand too much. They think it's a bit of an adventure. And then after that, they're getting very, very harmed. So there's big articles written on this in the mainstream media about this as well. So I was reading an article that was discussing this, and this was written by a non-Muslim. And what they said essentially was that because people don't have a religion anymore, non-Muslims especially, because they don't have a religion anymore. Europe used to be a Christian, a Judeo-Christian, mostly Christian continent. However, in the last 150, 200 years, religion has been diminishing, and Christianity, which used to be the religion here, has been pushed out. They say nowadays that when you come to work, when you go into media, when you go into schools, leave your religion by the door. Leave your religion by the door. Come in and just do the work, don't have any religion. You can practice privately whatever you want, but don't bring it outside in the public in anywhere. However, Muslims don't accept that, obviously. And we want to pray at work. We want to pray in the schools. And the reason it's tough and difficult is because the last 150, 200 years, there's been a falling out with religion. So They look at Islam as backward like Christianity because they don't agree with Christianity, for example, anymore. Or even if they call themselves Christian, they don't think that you have to do anything beyond going to church once a week. Or there's various different understanding and practices there. So now lots of people don't have a religion. They don't have a religion at all. And the problem is that when you don't have a religion, religion is a belief in something. Religion is something you can put your faith in. You can give yourself up to. You can immerse yourself in. That's what religion is. That's what people do with religion. You immerse yourself. You give yourself up to it. You hold a certain belief. And it gives you certain rituals to do. And this is very, very natural in a human beings to do this. So that's why, because it's so natural in human beings to follow something like this and to look for something higher than oneself and give themselves over to it and believe in it, because there's no religion anymore for a lot of people, they found other replacements. That could be anything. That could be pursuit for money. That could be following obsession with football. For example, in other countries, which people in this country would consider to be backward countries, they see people painting their faces and dancing a ritual, and they think they're crazy. They think, what are these crazy people doing? They're painting their faces and they're dancing like crazy people. Have you ever seen that happening anywhere? Yeah. Have you seen that happening in Western countries as well, that they paint their faces with various flags and then they jump up and down as well? For football, for example. Does that look crazy? It doesn't. For them, it doesn't, because you're used to this one, you're not used to that one, but it's the same thing. What makes you paint your faces and go crazy like this? So, everybody, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created human beings to worship Him. And because He's created us to worship Him and show our devotion to Him, that faculty exists within the human being. To worship something greater. If you don't find Allah, or you want to avoid Allah, then you're going to put something else in that place, because it's a capacity and a cavity within the human being and a desire to do that. So if you can't do that to Allah, then you're going to just find something else to do it for. Look at anybody, they've got something they focus on. Whether that's just food. One brother just told me, one friend of mine, he has a brother in another country who is a bit mentally retarded. He's maybe 40 and he has no interest in marrying at all. He's like a childish mind. But what he enjoys doing is eating. That's all he enjoys doing, is eating. Everybody has something that they really, really focus on. That's why even if you go to primitive villages, they will believe in the biggest thing in their village. They will call the mountain their God because the mountain is the biggest thing that they can see. The biggest tree in the village, some of them make that their object of worship. Because something being big represents might and power. And as I said, every human being has been born with a capacity to look in awe and believe in something greater. So they find something or the other. So people in these kind of villages or whatever, they'll find the biggest tree in town, the biggest river, the biggest mountain, and they'll call that their God. Because they think God must be greater. It's all within the human being to believe in a God, in something greater than oneself. So if you don't have Allah, then that tree will become your God. There's some religions which nearly 1 billion people follow. They take many, many gods. Anything that is of benefit will become a god for them. So the cow becomes a god because cows produce lots of benefits. So the cow is God. And then it gets worse. The private part is a god because it provides benefits. Life comes from it. They have a name for it. That they worship that. How they worship, don't ask me. Don't get curious. All right? Like, how do you do that? Don't get curious about that. All right? So everybody worships something. The biggest god of today among capitalists and in the consumer world is money. Everybody's after it. They enjoy it. They want more of it. They can't have enough of it. One of the recent sheikhs, he just passed away, a waliullah. He said that it's a good job that we as Muslims have Allah. Otherwise, the way some of us express our sentiments, money would be our God as well. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the belief that we have in Allah at least brings us one time in the masjid a week, minimum, which is for Friday. So at least one day a week, or for an hour, one day a week, we get away from our normal pursuit of the worship of money and everything related to money. And mashallah, we come and remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For others, it's 5 times a day they pray. So that keeps you away from the worship and pursuit of money. Otherwise, money would be your God. It is so easy for money to be God. You might be thinking, but for non-Muslims, that's always, for people who don't have a faith, that's always been the case. Not necessarily. More than 100 years ago and so on, people didn't go after money the way we do today. There were no brand names like 200 years ago and beyond. They were just the basics you'd have in your house, and you got enough, that's it. Then you do other work. There wasn't things to acquire and update your phone every year. None of that was there. They didn't have, all of these brands are very recent. This whole brand pursuit, pursuing after certain models and so on and so forth, it's just much more recent. So, we're living in a very strange time. So going back to the magic now, people have got no religion, they got free time, lots of young people. So through TikTok and Instagram and so on, they're getting into a cult. They're getting into magic. And essentially the way magic works, as we understand it, any magic, it works through jinn. People, they dominate a jinn, or they have a contract with a jinn, and the jinn does these crazy things for them, whatever it is, and then you have to do something for the jinn to do that for you. And usually it's bad jinn. And what they make you do is they make you do something which is blasphemous. I know this sounds really crazy, but they make you do something which is blasphemous. What they make you do is, for example, take sheets of pages of the Quran and smear it with blood or dirt or filth or menstrual blood. They've caught this kind. You can check this stuff online. I mean, don't get into it, but you can check this stuff online where they've caught people who are doing magic. They've had to do crazy things like that. Then the jinn will do something for you. So that's how it works. That's how magic works. Now these non-Muslims, they're getting involved in this and they're harming themselves. There's things like these boards, Ouija boards, that you can communicate with the shaitan with. And people think it's kind of exciting, we just pursuit, let's do something because we've got time, because there's no guidelines anymore. So they're doing this and they're getting harmed by this. They're getting harmed by this. These are non-Muslims I'm talking about. They have no idea. In the Muslim community, at least, we have some idea of what magic is. There's lots of people in our community who have issues. And for some people, it's a knee-jerk reaction to say, this is magic. And then they go and spend hundreds and thousands of pounds looking for somebody to cure them. And a lot of the people who are trying to provide this cure, they're not actually even capable. For some people, it's not even a magic problem, it's a psychological problem. They just need some medicine. But they refuse to go to the doctor. They refuse to go to a mental health therapist. What I usually say is that if you have a problem which is not the usual headache and so on, and you think it's something you can't find a cause, then you do multiple approaches. You do ruqyah through the Quran. And you also check with the professionals, with the therapist, to see if you can find a cure. But the one last point I want to make, which is very important, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us protection against all evil in this world, against all harmful things in this world. He's given us protection against them. The Prophet ﷺ used to use multiple du'as. And then when قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ was revealed, he started using them for protection. The Prophet ﷺ, somebody tried to do magic on him as well. They took his hair and they tied it in knots and did some spells on it. So this is a reality. But the Prophet ﷺ told us to read قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ and multiple Ayatul Kursi. I don't know if some of you saw that there was a video that went around of a Russian witch. When we say witch, we don't talk about these women with pointed hats and broomsticks anymore, right? These are modern witches. And it's kind of interesting that she said that I can do a spell on anybody except Muslims. Many Muslims, they have this protective halo around them. And I can't get through to them. If you're somebody who reads his du'as and does his salat, you're going to have protection. If you do wudu, you're going to have protection. If you stay in wudu, you're going to have a lot of protection. I'll give you an example. In 1999, I went to California for Taraweeh. And I stayed with this brother whose wife and children had gone to another country for that Ramadan, for that time. So his house was empty, so I took a room in there and I was living with him. One day I went to sleep after Taraweeh and about maybe 2 o'clock in the morning, suddenly there was a lamp in the room. It was a tall lamp. It's one of those touch lamps. You touch the base and it comes on a bit, you touch it a bit, touch it again. There's no switch, just touch it. You know those lamps, you've seen them, right? And then it becomes brighter and you touch it again, it becomes brighter. When you touch it again, it goes off. Suddenly in the middle of the light, the lamp came on and I woke up. And I said, who put the lamp on? I was wondering. He was sleeping in the other room. Now, the houses, they're made of kind of wood. They're not as solid and there's trains that go past, so maybe, whatever it could be. So the next morning or the next day, I told him about it. I said, Brother Musab, the lamp went on at night. So you know what he said? He said, you know, in that room, that's my son's room. And in that room, my son saw the shaitan. I was like, yeah, thank you very much. That's very comforting, mashallah. But actually, I'll tell you what the real story is. This is what he said. He said, my son saw the shaitan. So in the middle of the night, I suddenly heard my son, he's Syrian. He said, I suddenly heard my son calling me, Baba, Baba. So I quickly rushed over. And from the door, he's saying, Baba, I can see the shaitan, I can see the shaitan. So what would we have done if our children called us out? What would we have done? We'd probably gone and grabbed him and said, don't worry, it's okay. He didn't do that. By the door, he said, I told him, read Ayatul Kursi. So he's by the door and his son is in bed saying, I can see the shaitan, saying, read Ayatul Kursi. So the son starts reading, Allahu la ilaha illa wal hayyul qayyum la ta'khuduhu sinatun wa la nawm lahu ma bis sama. He said, Dad, it's going. Baba, it's going. And he went. Now imagine how empowering that is. Imagine how much confidence is given to that child. Just read Ayatul Kursi, it's gone. He didn't go and grab him and hug him and say, don't worry, I'll protect you, because that child will be looking for his father for protection all the time if he sees something crazy. That gave me a lot of power. I said, yeah, that gave me a lot of power. Because Ayatul Kursi works. Now, I've got a friend who has done a lot of research into witchcraft. Alhamdulillah, we don't have this in England in this way. We have problems in England, but this one, where you go to, in America, it's a modern country, right? America is a modern country that leads the world in a lot of things. But interestingly, every single town will have a psychic shop. You go to a mall or in the local, you'll see a shop that has psychic, fortune teller, proper store. Here you just see advertisements, like in phone booths or somewhere for that, right? But there you have proper shops with a psychic, soothsayer, fortune teller, or whatever. Now what he told me is that most of them are just fake. The way they do this is that you'll go to them with your problem. So they'll look at you and you'll start telling them your story, and then they'll say, oh, I know, hold on, you've got a problem with your husband, right? You got a problem with your wife? And then they look at your reaction, and if your kind of face drops, you say, no, hold on, let me look at the glass ball again. No, it's a problem with your work. It looks like your work. And then they look at the reaction on your face, whether your face lights up in acknowledgement or in disapproval or whatever, and they're all shallow. They don't last long, so then they close up shop and they go to another town. The professional ones, they have connection with a jinn, an agreement with a jinn. The jinn speaks to your shaitan. Every one of us has a shaitan with them from our birth. The Prophet ﷺ, even him, although he said that my shaitan has been subdued. Our shaitan knows everything about us because he's been with us since birth. That's why he knows exactly what to make us think wherever we are, so then we do the wrong thing. He doesn't have to ever push us to do anything. He has to remind us of the pleasure of something, and then we end up indulging. Remind us that we hate somebody and then we start fighting. He knows more than our parents about us. Allah protect us. You just have to read A'udhu Billah, you just have to read dhikr, and then it goes. So now what happens is, I have to finish this off. That jinn of theirs communicates with the shaitan. Shaitans though, jinn are they're made of fire, so they have a very fiery imagination. They never tell this. Very difficult for you to get the full truth out of them or something like that. So they tell a lot of stories. That's why sometimes you go to certain people and they might know certain things about you. They can never know fully everything about you, but all of a sudden you start believing them, so you give them more money. We're not allowed, it's haram for us to go to soothsayers and fortune tellers. Because they have maybe a bit of the truth and they have a lot of falsehood in there, and they can make you hate the wrong person and create problems and so on. So anyway, our job is to be protected. We should pray, and then we should teach our children to do the Ayatul Kursi. So according to a friend of mine who's done a lot of research, he says that the wizards and sorcery people, they say that the only thing which can protect is something which the Muslims have, which is Ayatul Kursi. Allahu la ilaha illa wal hayyul qayyum. We know this one. Every morning and evening, read your Ayatul Kursi. Qul huwa Allahu ahad. Qul a'udhu bi rabbil falaq. Qul a'udhu bi rabbin nas. And then the du'as that we have, which is like Bismillahi alladhi la yadurru ma'a ismihi shay'un fil ardi wala bis sama'i wa huwa as-sami'ul alim. A'udhu bi kalimatillahi at-tammati min sharri ma khalaq. Right, in which we're literally asking Allah to protect us from all the evil He has created. And inshallah we'll stay protected. Try to never stay for too long without ghusl, if you need a ghusl. And try to always stay on wudu as far as you can. Right? And inshallah that will protect us. Inshallah that will protect us. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for protection. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah.